In a world where color and class still draw invisible lines, one young disabled billionaire's son and a black waitress will cross them in a way no one expected. What begins as a moment of embarrassment in a five-star restaurant soon becomes a dance that changes everything. A dance that heals, humbles, and transforms lives forever. Before we dive into this story, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more powerful and inspirational stories. The silence that fell over Le Mirage restaurant in Manhattan's most exclusive district was so thick it seemed to have weight. Conversation ceased, cutlery froze in mid-air, and dozens of eyes fixed on the small space between the tables. 10-year-old Noah Kingsley was visibly shaking. His legs, trapped in metal braces, wavered as he reached out to Ava Roberts, the restaurant's only black waitress. The live piano had just begun a soft melody, and the boy's impulse to ask someone to dance came without warning. "Sir, control your son." Manager Collins's sharp voice cut through the silence. "That's inappropriate. This is not a dance hall, and our employees are not here to entertain children." Ethan Kingsley, owner of Kingsley Holdings and one of the richest men in the country, swallowed hard. It was the first time he had taken Noah out to dinner in public since the accident that had partially paralyzed his legs 2 years earlier. A mistake he would not repeat. "Noah, sit down." The order came low but firm. Ava remained motionless, her gaze shifting between the manager, the billionaire, and the boy whose hand was still hanging in the air. In her 5 years working there, she had learned to become invisible, especially to customers like Kingsley. "Mr. Collins, I'm leaving. My shift is over." Her voice sounded calm as she removed her apron and placed it on the tray. Then, to everyone's amazement, she smiled at Noah and took his hand. "I can't dance in an apron." Ethan stood up abruptly. "What do you think you're doing?" Ava held his gaze. "I'm accepting an invitation, sir." Before anyone could interfere, Noah took a hesitant step forward. His foot dragged painfully across the floor, and the metal of his braces screeched. But Ava didn't try to guide him or hurry him. She simply adjusted her own pace to his. "She's getting fired tomorrow," whispered a woman at the next table. Ethan watched, paralyzed. A sudden memory struck him. Grace, his late wife, dancing with Noah in the living room. "It's not about perfection," she had said. "It's about connection." As Ava followed Noah's clumsy steps, something in the boy's eyes changed. Fear gave way to intense concentration. Shame gave way to shy pride. For the first time since the accident, he wasn't being guided, helped, or corrected. He was leading. "Mr. Kingsley," the manager's voice interrupted his thoughts. "I can assure you this will never happen again. She will be properly disciplined." Ethan didn't respond. The entire restaurant seemed to wait for his reaction. After all, a man of his power could end anyone's career with a single word. Employees stopped what they were doing. Other customers watched with morbid curiosity. Noah's smile, however, was the only sound that echoed in his mind. Ava led the boy back to the table after 3 dance steps. "Thank you for asking me out," she said formally, as if speaking to an adult. "It was an honor." When she turned to leave, Ethan stopped her. "Wait." His voice sounded different, almost unrecognizable to himself. "What's your full name?" "Ava Roberts, sir." Ethan nodded slowly. "Ava Roberts," he repeated as if memorizing it. Then he took a card from inside his jacket and held it out to her. "My office, tomorrow at 10 a.m. The entire restaurant held its breath. Ava accepted the card without showing any emotion, but her hand trembled slightly. "Dad?" Noah called as she walked away. "Why did you do that?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Ethan watched his son and for a brief moment saw not just the child Grace had left in his care, but a complete human being whose wants and needs he had systematically ignored for 2 years. As dinner proceeded in awkward silence, no one noticed Ava's glance before she left. Not out of fear or resignation, but out of a calm determination that contrasted with the storm brewing in Ethan Kingsley's eyes. If this story about dignity and transformation is already touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow how a simple gesture of respect can spark a silent revolution capable of transforming lives forever. The lobby of Kingsley Holdings Tower sparkled with its glass and marble walls, reflecting the morning sunlight. Ava Roberts immediately felt out of place in her best outfit. A navy blue skirt and white blouse bought on sale. The people passing by her wore clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Ava Roberts to see Mr. Kingsley, she said to the receptionist, who examined her with a clinical gaze before making a call. 18th floor. Miss Hartley will see you. In the elevator, Ava took a deep breath, clutching her worn purse to her chest. It wasn't fear she felt. It was a quiet determination that came from having faced worse. Much worse. Miss Hartley was a woman in her 40s with a sharp gaze and impeccable posture. Mr. Kingsley is in a conference call. Please follow me. As she walked through the mirrored hallways, Ava felt the curious stares of employees. A black woman being escorted through the executive offices was a rare enough occurrence to cause speculation. He had you fired, didn't he? Hartley asked suddenly when they were alone in a waiting room. It happens. Powerful clients call, and people like you lose their jobs. People like me, Ava replied quietly. You know what I mean, Hartley said, adjusting her glasses. Employees who don't know their place. Ava smiled, not amused. And where exactly would that be? Before Hartley could answer, her phone rang. He'll see you now. Ethan Kingsley's office took up half the floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan looked like a distant playground. The man stood, gazing out at the city as if it were his personal property. Mr. Kingsley, Ava greeted him formally. Ethan turned, his face a mask of studied control. Miss Roberts, thank you for coming. He pointed to a chair. Please. The silence that followed was calculated, a tactic Ava recognized immediately. It was the kind of silence designed to make nervous people talk too much, incriminate themselves. Do you have a background? Ethan finally asked. Excuse me? Education, college? Ava kept her gaze steady. Bachelor's degree in child development from NYU, incomplete master's degree in special education. Something flashed across Ethan's face, surprise perhaps. And you work as a waitress? I work 3 jobs actually, the restaurant, a bookstore on weekends, and as a tutor when I can get students. Ethan moved to her table, picking up a folder. I did some research on you, Miss Roberts. I wanted to understand who the person was, who, he hesitated, danced with my son. He opened the folder, revealing printed photos of a community center. Hope Motion Initiative. You founded that 6 years ago. Ava sat up straighter in her chair. I co-founded it with my sister Naomi, a dance program for children with physical disabilities. Ethan leafed through some documents, which is now about to close due to lack of funding. Ava showed no surprise. Of course, he would find all that out in less than 24 hours. I didn't come here to ask you for money, Mr. Kingsley. Then why did you come? Because you invited me. Ethan laughed softly, a joyless sound. Fair enough. He stood up again, restless. I want you to work for me. Ava blinked, genuinely taken aback. As a waitress in your house? Ethan's face hardened. As a therapeutic companion for Noah. His son's name seemed difficult for him to say. Ava noticed how his eyes momentarily drifted to a photo on the table, a smiling woman holding a baby. I have the best specialists in the country, Ethan continued, physical therapists, neurologists, psychologists. But what you did yesterday, he paused as if the words betrayed him. It was just a dance, Mr. Kingsley. It was the first time I've seen him smile since the accident. The admission was painful. I don't want a dancer for my son. I want someone who can do what you did. Follow, not lead. Ava studied the man in front of her. Beneath the facade of power and control, she saw what others might not. A desperate, lost father. I can pay you 5 times what you're making now. Ava stood up. No. Ethan looked shocked, like someone unaccustomed to hearing that word. I don't work for people who see only my color or my social class before they see my competence, she explained calmly. And I definitely don't work for people who try to buy solutions to emotional problems. Ethan's face flushed. You're turning down an offer that would solve your financial problems out of pride. Out of dignity, Ava corrected. And because your son deserves more than someone hired to pretend to care. She walked to the door, then paused. Noah doesn't need more experts. He needs space to lead his own life. You don't know my son. No, Ava agreed. But I know people like him. People whose physical limitations are nothing compared to the invisible cages we build around them. She took a card from her purse and placed it on the table. Hope Motion classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 p.m. If you'd like to bring Noah, the first class is free. As Ava left, she passed Hartley, who had obviously been listening behind the door. You just turned down an offer from Ethan Kingsley, she whispered incredulously. Are you crazy? Ava smiled. Maybe, but I'd rather be crazy than be property. The following Wednesday, Ava was at the reception desk of the community center when Naomi, her sister and co-founder of the project, came running up. There's a Bentley parked outside, she whispered, nervously adjusting her headscarf. And you won't believe who's inside. Through the window, Ava saw the luxurious car. Noah was in the back seat, looking anxiously out the window. Ethan remained in the driver's seat, his hands still on the steering wheel, as if fighting an internal battle. He's not coming in, Naomi predicted. Men like him don't come to places like this. Ava smiled, remembering Noah's gaze during those brief moments of dancing. Don't underestimate the power of a determined son. As they watched, the car door opened. Noah got out slowly, adjusting his braces. Then, to everyone's surprise, Ethan got out too. The billionaire looked out of place in his casual pants and sweater, an obvious attempt to appear less formal, but still screaming privilege. I told you he'd come, Ava murmured more to herself. Naomi stared at her. What did you do? Ava didn't answer, but her eyes sparkled with a secret that not even her sister fully knew. In her tiny apartment in the Bronx, hidden under her bed, was a notebook filled with notes about children like Noah and men like Ethan Kingsley. Years of observation, research, and a plan that had begun with a simple acceptance of an invitation to dance. What Ethan Kingsley didn't know, what he couldn't imagine in his world of glass towers and endless bank accounts, was that Ava Roberts wasn't just a waitress who had agreed to dance with his son. She was a woman with a mission, and his empire of isolation and privilege was about to face its greatest challenge. The simple truth that some of the greatest lessons in life cannot be bought. They must be lived. Hope Motion Initiative operated out of an old community warehouse. Handmade posters decorated the walls with phrases like, your rhythm, your rules, and every move counts. When Ethan and Noah entered, children with various types of mobility devices practiced free movements to the sound of a light beat. Mr. Kingsley, Ava approached, wearing simple clothes with the program's logo. Welcome. Noah watched the children in awe. A girl in a wheelchair spun in precise circles, while a boy with a prosthetic leg created a sequence of steps. It looks chaotic, Ethan commented, visibly uncomfortable. There is structure, Ava replied. It's just not the one you recognize. She turned to Noah. Would you like to join in? The boy nodded enthusiastically, but looked at his father, hesitant. Go on, Ethan said tensely. I'll be right here. As Ava guided Noah to the group, Naomi approached Ethan and offered him a chair. The first day is always the hardest, she commented. For the parents, not the kids. This isn't therapy, Ethan argued. I hired the best rehabilitation specialists. And how has that been working for Noah? Naomi asked gently. The studio door opened. An older woman entered, leaning on an ornate cane. She had grey hair in elegant braids and a commanding presence. Dr. Helena Grant, Naomi whispered, neuroscientist specializing in brain plasticity, retired from Harvard. The woman greeted several children before noticing Ethan. Mr. Kingsley, you've rejected my research proposal 3 times in the last 2 years. Dr. Grant, I didn't expect to see you here. I oversee the research program, she explained. We're studying how non-directive approaches to movement affect neural reconfiguration in children with motor challenges. Research? Ethan frowned. I thought this was just a community dance class. Ava returned, leaving Noah exploring movements with another child. Hope Motion is a pilot motor rehabilitation program based on the theory of movement autonomy, she explained. We integrate adaptive dance with neuroscientific principles. Why do you work as a waitress if you lead a research program? Because we don't have adequate funding yet, and because people like you rejected us 3 times. The penny dropped. You were Dr. Grant's assistant on the proposals. Co-author, Dr. Grant corrected. Ava has an incomplete master's degree because she had to leave college to take care of her sister. But her theoretical work is groundbreaking. You knew who I was at the restaurant. Ethan concluded. From the moment you walked in, Ava confirmed. And when Noah got up to dance, I recognized the opportunity to show, not tell. Was it staged, the dance? Absolutely not. Noah chose to get up. I chose to follow. A group of reporters entered the studio. Ethan immediately tensed. What's this? Part 2 of the plan. Ava smiled slightly. Naomi showed Ethan a newly published article. Revolutionary motor rehabilitation methodology shows promising results. We published our first results today, Dr. Grant explained, and we invited the press. You used my son for a public relations stunt. Ethan's voice was pure ice. Ava led him into a side room where photos of dozens of children adorned the walls, each with handwritten progress statistics. On the last wall was an empty frame. What's that? He asked. Our future. The full rehabilitation center we could build if we had the resources. 500 children a year instead of 50. You orchestrated all this, Ethan muttered. The dance, the meeting, bringing me here on press day. I saw an opportunity and took it. 4 months ago, when you cancelled our meeting without reading the proposal, I promised myself I'd find a way. Ava, Naomi interrupted, it's Noah. They rushed back. Noah was in the center of the room, surrounded by other children. Someone had turned off the music, and everyone watched in silence. The boy had removed one of his braces and was trying to balance on just one support. Noah, Ethan started forward, but Ava stopped him. Wait, she whispered. Watch. Noah took a deep breath, focused. Then, to everyone's amazement, especially his father's, he took a complete step without full support. It was small, shaky, but entirely his. The children cheered. Camera flashes went off. Ethan's face, usually composed and unreadable, was now exposed with unshed tears glistening in his eyes. That's why we created Hope Motion, Ava said softly. It's not about perfect steps. It's about first steps on your own. Ethan watched his son, not as a problem to be managed, but as a complete person discovering his own strength. This could have been done without manipulating me, he said finally. It could have been if you had answered our calls or read our proposals 3 times. The reporters noticed Ethan. A murmur grew as Noah, oblivious to the tension, continued practicing his new step with an expression of pure concentration. Ethan Kingsley was cornered. Before him lay 2 options. Withdraw in anger, confirming to the press his reputation as cold and calculating, or embrace the moment his son had created. Between the power he had always wielded and the freedom his son needed, Ethan found himself in unfamiliar territory, one where neither his money nor his influence defined the next step. The man who controlled every aspect of his life now faced a choice that no amount of wealth could buy. His gaze shifted between his smiling son and the reporters waiting for his reaction. Humility was not a virtue in his vocabulary, but as he saw the transformation on Noah's face, something inside him began to break. The orchestra of power and privilege he was accustomed to now played a different tune, and he had to decide, would he continue conducting, or would he learn to follow? A reporter approached cautiously. Mr. Kingsley, could you comment on your presence at Hope Motion today? Is it true that your foundation rejected funding this program 3 times? Ethan glanced at Noah, who was still practicing his new step, oblivious to the political tension. Then, to everyone's surprise, especially Ava's, he smiled. You know what's hardest for someone in my position? Ethan addressed the reporter, but spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Admitting when we're wrong. A stunned silence filled the room. The Kingsley Foundation is pleased to announce a commitment to fully fund Hope Motion for the next 5 years and to build a permanent rehabilitation center based on the methodology developed by Dr. Grant and Miss Roberts. Camera flashes exploded. Naomi let out a small cry of surprise. On one condition, Ethan added, watching Ava tense up, that Miss Roberts retain complete autonomy over the program and its methodology, no corporate interference. 3 months later, bulldozers were clearing the ground for the new Hope Motion Rehabilitation Center. The project wasn't the most luxurious the Kingsley Foundation had ever funded, but it was the most innovative, with every space designed with direct input from the children and their families. Ava supervised the construction frequently, but never alone. Noah showed up regularly, sometimes bringing other children with him. And to the staff's continued surprise, Ethan Kingsley also appeared, silently observing the progress. I never thought you'd actually show up at board meetings, Ava commented one afternoon as they reviewed the plans. I never thought I'd have to study neuroplasticity at 50, Ethan replied, rubbing his tired eyes. In front of him was a scientific article marked with post-it notes. But here we are. Ava looked at the man curiously. Is this part of your public penance, or do you really care? Noah asked to have his second brace removed last week. I know, he told me. His previous physical therapist said that would be impossible for at least 2 years. Ava smiled. But you fired her, remember? Because you told me she was wrong. And she was. Ava pointed to a photo of Noah balancing with only one crutch. He's progressing faster than any traditional medical prediction. Why did you never accept my apology? Ethan asked suddenly. Because you never apologized, Ava answered simply. You redirected resources, changed policies, funded our program. That's not an apology. It's compensation. Ethan nodded slowly. Fair again. At the opening ceremony 6 months later, the contrast with that night at Le Mirage couldn't have been greater. The huge adaptive space was filled with children with various types of mobility devices, all moving freely. In the center of the main hall, Noah, now wearing only a lightweight brace on his left leg, led a small choreographed routine with 3 other children. His movements were still limited, but they flowed with a confidence no doctor had predicted. Ethan watched from a distance, not interfering. He doesn't need you to hold him anymore, Ava said, approaching quietly. No, Ethan agreed, but he still needs me to be around. Crucial difference. Ethan turned to face her. Thank you, he said simply. For what exactly? For teaching me to follow. A reporter approached. Mr. Kingsley, how does it feel to see your son's progress? Ethan looked at Noah, who was now helping a younger girl find her balance. Proud, he said softly, not of what he's overcome, but of what he's created for others. And what's been the biggest lesson you've learned on this journey? Ethan Kingsley, the man who had once been known only for his financial empire, looked directly into the camera. That true leaders aren't those who guide others down the path they believe is right, but those who have the courage to follow when someone shows them a better way. A year later, the Hope Motion initiative expanded to 3 new cities. Ava received the Pediatric Rehabilitation Innovation Award, and her methodology began to be implemented in hospitals across the country. Noah, now using only a light cane on difficult days, enrolled in regular school and became a youth spokesperson for the program, inspiring other children to find their own pace. And Ethan learned the hardest and most valuable lesson of all, that true power does not lie in controlling every move, but in knowing when it is time to take a step back and let others lead the way. In a world where powerful people rarely change their perspectives and where those without power often remain in the shadows, the story of Ethan, Ava, and Noah reminds us that true transformation occurs when we cross the invisible boundaries that separate us. When a billionaire learns from a waitress. When a father follows in his son's footsteps. If this story about how a simple gesture of dignity changed lives forever touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to our channel, because we believe that the most profound revolutions don't start with grand manifestos or billion-dollar fortunes. They start when someone has the courage to take an authentic first step, and someone else has the wisdom to follow. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, whether it's the United States, Canada, South Africa, the UK, or anywhere around the world. We love seeing your flags and hearing from you.